winemakers talk about clones. Some winemakers don't care about clones, they care about the vineyard. Some winemakers care very much about the clones. So when we planted, we kind of took what we thought for Syrah, because we have 23 acres, we have 11 blocks of it. We wanted to take what we thought was sort of, the Hogan's Heroes, the top 3 from every country. And so we took the NTAV book and looked through it, and we studied a lot of the clones, and we met with vineyard owners in France, and we've honed in on particular clones that do well in France. 383 is one of them. 174 is another one. When we were in Australia, we looked at what did well in Australia. Some of those clones haven't hit in the United States at that time, so we were sort of limited by default, but we found some other things that worked. And then we also looked at what was great in California, what was doing well, like Estrella River Crone, Durell, all these kind of things. We looked at all that, and we kind of put it out basically on a table and said, okay, what are we looking for? Where are we going with this? And kind of honed in on, let's pick some of the best from each one of these countries, because for all intents and purposes, California is still a relatively new wine growing region. So what may be applicable in France may not apply here, but if we take some of their top picks, we're starting off with what we hope are like the starters, hopefully they will show. Now, we're not 100% sure all the time. I mean, again, like I said, we're still relatively newcomers to Syrah, so this is where we have a little check for ourselves. So we actually planted 6 different rows of experimental selections of clones that we were very interested in, but we didn't want to make the commitment to a 2 or 3 acre block. And so the idea of this, what we call the experimental section, is purely a look at it from a viticultural perspective. There is enough rows to harvest grapes and to ferment them separately, but they would be done in 5-gallon lots, and they're not going to be strictly applicable to the winemaking standards. But at least it gives us an idea from a growing perspective, how do these compare to the other blocks that we have? And so if we have a block out here that does well, we can say this is a clone that we want to look at in the future, those kind of things. So we have 99 Noir, 525, 470, and then we can compare those to our 383 or 174 or Estrella. Because luckily we're in a position that this whole ranch is 130 acres. We have another 30 acres to plant to vines, which we'll do after this whole permit saga finishes. And so we have ability to grow. So this is kind of like a little, training ground. Right. Which guys would we take from here to bring over there? The other thing that we just recently decided to do, and it's actually down in the, there's a clearing that we have here, you might have seen on the way up, is we're actually going to start doing a little Massal selection. So we're going to take a couple of these clones, put them together, and let them go to seed, use their seeds, start propagating off the seeds, and do that a couple of times. And so we're looking into that because we also want to, again, it's like we're taking the top from Australia and France, but we're in California, so let's start acclimating them. Let's see how they start doing in their when they start becoming a little more native to us. Because we don't really, California doesn't really have that many native Vitis vinifera species, so this is a way of kind of like getting the tan on them, so they get used to the environment. So we're going to be doing that as well. So it's kind of a dynamic thing. That'll be something that we'll bring over to the new plantings as well. So again, taking a look at what does well here, what we think could do well, and then also what we're going to acclimate will be something that we focus when we go to the other side of the ranch. But so this is kind of fun because and in the past they used to sell this all to like little home winemakers, right. And it was great because everybody was like, hey, even Larner sells even a quarter of a ton, but now actually I take it all and I use it in my wine making for the estate, and actually I pick it all together and ferment it all together, so it's all co-fermented, but we really love it, so we can go in there and look at it viticulturally, see which one's shattering, which one is heavy load, all these kind of things. So we can kind of compare those clones based on everything else. But also, ironically, and we kind of knew going into each block layout, like which block we thought would do well, which ones we thought would do, would need a little help, all these kind of things, based on soil and all, and that's why we changed the rootstocks. But we never anticipated like the block that we're standing in is like our crew of the entire vineyard. And it's funniest because it's like 7 feet of beach sand. I never would have. I didn't think of that mentally. You're like, oh, that's like the worst soil that we have. You know, it's like my dad always joked, like we should have just taken this and given it to, you know, schoolyard for the playgrounds, because it's so sandy. But you know, that actually has been really beneficial because it's forced these vines that are normally quite vigorous to be in check and not overproduce. But the other thing that's amazing about them is, you know, almost every cluster is like picture perfect.
Oh, they are.
And you know, so like the running joke is, you know, if somebody wants to come out and take pictures of, you know, Syrah for like varietal, you know, trueness, I'm like, well, I got a whole 5 acres of it, you know. So because of that, I mean, it's all uniform, you know, and sometimes we have to come in here and thin things out. But you know, it's so perfectly uniform that like by default, this has sort of become our crew. Whereas the other ones, you know, have great fruit, but they just don't look as pretty as this. You know, so but that's why it's really neat to be in this block to compare some experimental stuff compared to some just normal, you know, production blocks for us. And see that, but also look at this and see, you know, wow, this is really, you know, great soil, even though you wouldn't think it, you know. The weeds don't even like it.